Good day and welcome to the Leading with Nice interview series podcast. My name is Matthew Ewell and we want to help you inspire others, build loyalty, and get results. Now, it's not often on my journey that I come across somebody who is saying kind of some similar things and teaching some similar thoughts. So I was really excited when my sister actually told me about Keka DasGupta. And oddly enough, we went to high school together. However, we weren't. I know often on this podcast, you'll hear me tell a story about me playing with a guest growing up or whatnot. Keka and I didn't know each other that well, which is just so funny that two people from the same little community in Scarborough grew up to have some very similar thoughts about leadership. So I am super excited to have a conversation with her and dig more into what she does specifically. So Keka, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I'm so excited to be here.
So before we get going, can you just give us a little bit, give the listeners a little bit of context around, what you do and what you speak about and what your main driving message is?
Yes, absolutely. So I have founded a personal development platform called The Art of Lifing. So if you think of adulting, for example, growing up, this is all about doing life on purpose and on your own terms. And my background and the story of how I came to be here is that I used to work in marketing, public relations, and branding. I've done that for 24 years. And one of the things that I noticed is that while we tend to suffer from self-esteem issues, research now shows us that 85% of the world's population is suffering from low self-esteem, which is, a staggering invisible pandemic that we're dealing with alongside the COVID-19 pandemic, Brands, on the other hand, are rooted in their own power. They're everything around brands has to be always about the brand itself. So imagine Coca-Cola, always steeped in red, always the shape of the bottle. McDonald's with the golden arches. Like, brands are always about themselves, and we accept that as people. I mean, if I ask you, Matthew, have you ever met a brand with low self-esteem? The question is unequivocally no, right? Yeah. So there seems to be a double standard here. And so what I started to look at was, if we take the principles behind branding, which is all about knowing yourself, knowing what you stand for, understanding your values, really staying within what makes you you and really appreciating that and sharing it with the world, if we apply those to our mental health and wellness strategies, the results can be transformative because we can find the power inside of ourselves to not only support us, but the people around us. And so that's where this work came from. And today I do workshops with entrepreneurs, business leaders, C-suites, just really focusing in on the employee workplace. And I also work in the education community with teachers, parents, students, all about how we can step into our own power so we can give the best of ourselves, both to us and all the people around us as well.
So one of the main messages when I was going through your website and watching some of your videos online was around gratitude.
Yes.
And I was really curious because this is gratitude is one of our 6 qualities of the nice leader. Gratitude, empathy, trust, honesty, generosity, and service kind of round out the top 6 or the entire 6. And so I'm just curious, what is the difference between practicing gratitude for yourself and practicing it for others? And if you can contextualize this in a workplace environment, that'd be, I think, most helpful for listeners.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so when we think of gratitude in terms of us practicing it itself, many of us have heard of, writing in a journal, for example, thinking about when you wake up in the morning or when you go to sleep, the 3 things that you're most grateful for. But that practice, and so much research has shown that the brain chemistry, like there's brain science behind the fact that when you practice gratitude, it changes the way we think about ourselves, the way we see our world, it increases our positivity, all of that, but it stays within us. And one of the biggest things that I advocate for when you share gratitude, when you pay that forward to somebody else, it's like you double the positive impact. And so if I said to you today, if I give you $100,000, Matthew, Just by me giving it to you, the value of this is going to turn into $200,000. Who's going to walk away from that? And this is rooted in science that shows that our brain chemistry changes in this way. And so when it comes to gratitude itself, when we share it with somebody else, there is this unexpected side effect that sort of doubles the impact. And that happens because when we show gratitude to someone else, we show them the impact that they've had on us. And at the end of the day, Matthew, we all want to feel like we matter. Right? The three basic needs that we have, every single human being on earth, is: do you see me? Do you hear me? And do I matter? And when you're showing gratitude to someone else and say, when you did this for me, or just by being who you are, you've left this impact on me, there's unequivocal proof to somebody that they matter. So now let's take this into the workforce. A lot of people in the past, and I think things are changing now. I think leaders are really starting to understand more the dynamics of gratitude, the brain science behind it. But it used to be considered like a soft quality, something that was nice to have, but not a must have. For some reason, nice seemed for so long to be something that was optional. And yet it's changing today, because research shows us in the workplace, when you have a gratitude-centered leadership style, when your culture is focused on recognition and gratitude, you find that employees are more engaged. You'll find that employees are actually more productive. And in this world today where, in Canada's marketplace, for example, or even in the US, we can see a huge talent shortage, right? There's bidding wars for talent today out in the recruitment world. Well, retention increases when you have a gratitude-focused workforce. So all of the pain points that so many companies are facing when it comes to their workforce, gratitude is this currency that's a foundation that changes positively all of the challenges that many people are having today. And it's the kind of thing, Matthew, I find that, for leaders, once you see it, you can't unsee it after that. It becomes so apparent and so obvious. It's like, how did I not recognize this before? And it's the kind of thing that when you put this into your workplace, it can really be transformative, because people feel the intrinsic motivation inside of themselves to do better. And in fact, one more thing in this world today, we live in this information and technology world today where innovation, risk-taking are so important. We've seen from various studies that when people in the workforce have a culture of gratitude, it actually helps employees make better risk-taking decisions, and it helps the innovation within a company. So, when you look at all of that, it's really hard to disregard the impact of gratitude in the workforce.
So you mentioned, my next question was around how do you measure gratitude? Because I agree with you. One of the problems we faced at Leading with Nice when we first started talking to companies about this is like, this is great, but how does it make us money?
Yes.
And when I did a master's in leadership and management, and it was all around answering that question: how do you make money by being a nice leader? And you mentioned some of the key points, like attendance, like sick days go down like 30%,
Yes.
which there's a study out of the University of West Virginia that showed like a 30% decrease in employees taking sick days can typically be translated into a 6% gross profit increase. It talked about, the average employee in today's world will stay 3.1 years versus like 2.5 years. So you push out that need to retrain, to rehire, and all the costs that are included with that. Not that, the thing that's I found important is that it's not like you will stop employees from taking sick days, or you'll stop employees from leaving and changing jobs, but it will definitely encourage them to stay longer.
Yes, absolutely.
So leading to that, do you find it, because I can imagine it's true, do you find it difficult to clarify with leaders in organizations that emotional intelligence, like practicing gratitude, is actually a good business practice for the bottom line? Because surely it must be more than just showing stats and figures, because they have access to that as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that it's all about perspective. And I think that it is about where we look and how we look at things and how we measure. So today the tide is changing. I think a lot, like we were talking about, a lot of leaders, once they see this, they don't unsee it, they recognize it. And so the movement is changing in this way. But when I'm in a boardroom and I'm talking to the C-suites, there's a few things that I'll look at and I'll talk about. We know, for example, with children who are growing up, that arts and music has a really big impact on them. right? In fact, when you have an engineer, for example, or someone who's a doctor or a scientist, if they've had music or arts in their life when they were growing up, the impact of that is reflected in the work that they do today, even though that might have nothing to do with what they do. But that's something that we can't measure, but we acknowledge. Right? If I said to you, can you tell me measurably, how does art impact our life? Let's think about opera or the ballet or Van Gogh or, any of the sort of arenas there that we would consider in the artistic realm. How does that impact the way that we actually, how does that improve me as a worker? There isn't a way to say it, but we acknowledge it. In the same way, in the medical field, for example, when we do trials and case studies, we have the placebo effect. Let's say, how do we measure the impact of placebos? I want to have a specific measurement and tell me why that works or doesn't work. We don't have that, but we know the placebo effect works. And so in the same way, today, if leaders start to look at the research out there that's all based on brain-based science, they're going to be able to start to see that it's not just about measuring gratitude in itself as the metric. I'm going to put this in and I want to measure how much gratitude is actually helping our workforce, but rather we have to measure outcomes. And, this is one of the big things in marketing. People have always said to me, how do I measure the impact of my marketing? The advertising world is valued at $1.4 trillion a year, right? But if you say, how do I specifically measure this creative ad? How did that actually work? We don't know how it did it, but we know that the statistics show and support its impact. And so gratitude, empathy, kindness, all of these things sort of, work in the same way. So when I'm in a boardroom and I talk about this, what I start to focus on is, let's look at the outcomes. So there's so many case studies that show the benefit of increased productivity, increased engagement, increased retention. So we start to look at those and say, let's look at the outcomes, not the outputs. In the marketing world, people would say, okay, I've put out an ad, or I've done a press release, or I've done the branding and the logo, ta-da! And people say, where's the value in that? You can't measure the actual output, but you can measure the business outcome. So when I'm working with leaders, I'll say, okay, we have these case studies. There's a whole slew of evidence that shows if you look at the outcomes in your business, when you put these strategies in place, it can make a massive difference. And so if I said to you today, I've got a software program that if you use this today, it'll increase engagement and productivity from your employees by 21%. Would you be interested in that? Yes, because it's a tangible thing. All I have to do is input it and then that's it. 20%, 21%, sign me up. But we don't tend to think and jump at the chance of bringing gratitude, kindness, and empathy into our workforce because we tend to be looking at the measurement from an output perspective. We really have to change that measurement to an outcome perspective. And as soon as we do that, you're going to see the business outcomes, and then it's unequivocal. You can't sort of shake your head away from that. And, you were talking about emotional intelligence, Matthew, and I think one of the key things that I think businesses need to recognize, and I've learned this from being in the advertising industry for 24 years, is that scientific studies across the board has shown the advertising industry, when it comes to decision-making sciences, that 95% of our decision-making, generally speaking, 95% of our decision-making is emotionally based. And then we save 5% of our decision making for that rational thought, except that rational thought is reserved to rationalize our emotional decision making. And so you'll see the most effective, most powerful ads in the world are not throwing facts at you. It is purely emotional. And, car companies, for example, have tried this in different ways. They've done one where it's like, here's all the safety measures and here's all of our features and here's the pricing. Then they'll do something that is emotional with some pricing. And then they've done those A/B tests, and the purely emotional ads always exponentially far outweigh in performance for sales the actual sales of a car, because it's emotionally connected. And so if business leaders can start to understand that decision making that we have at a very intrinsic level, then it's really clear how important emotional intelligence is in our workforce. When everyday decisions, not only for our customers, but our employees as well, are based on emotion, how can we strengthen our emotional immunity and not just our physical health and wellness? There's this entire part of us that influences everything we do. And until we acknowledge that, we're not going to be able to take advantage of its power.
That is so great. And one thing you touched on that I think I want to, we won't go deeply into it today, But one of the things that makes, why doesn't everybody just do emotional selling then? The key is, it's like, what is the messaging you're going to use to derive the emotions that will encourage somebody to like click or like buy that product. And that's just FYI, that's the hard part, everybody, around discerning this.
Yes.
But what Keka is talking about, at least what I'm hearing, is not just that this is actually something that's really important for you to understand for your internal team, but this is something that you can use as an approach to your customers, both in the way you do guest relations or customer service, as well as marketing and advertising. And more we're seeing those departments being spearheaded by the same person.
Yes.
So one person will have their guest relations and marketing under them because they recognize it's one and the same because of the skills that Keka has been talking about. The other, you mentioned something else earlier in that piece that I thought was really fascinating, and it was around it was around another thing that I found really interesting, that yes, there's lots of behavioral science, but there's the brain science that I find fascinating that people need to be aware of is we don't know necessarily we don't know what it is about that thing that makes a business outcome happen, but we do know. One of my favorite studies what we do know to show this is this one study where they had two friends, and one friend was hooked up to this machine that gave them like a very like light shock, and they had an fMRI, which is a functional MRI machine, so it shows a live view of the brain instead of just a snapshot like an MRI. And when they get the shock, their brain would go off, right? And they'd show some parts of their brain where that's responding to the shock. Now they disconnected that young woman. They connected her friend to it, and as her friend was getting shocked, the friend who had just been shocked, her brain would fire it the same way, right? It would be almost like she was experiencing that as well, and that is empathy in your brain.
Yes.
What they would do then is they hooked up a stranger to that person, getting the same shock, and that person was getting the signals in their brain that they were being shocked, but the two girls were not responding because they didn't have empathy for that person. And I thought that was so important because what they discovered is the reason they didn't have empathy is because they didn't consider that person as part of themselves, like not themselves as in like, this is a me, but their whole self. And what that says about when you're talking about gratitude in the workplace and doubling it is it takes effort. You can't just be like, oh, I'm a nice person and say thank you. You actually have to care.
Yes.
Like you actually have to do it. And
this is not a fake it till you make it. You actually have to believe it.
It's a lot of what you're speaking about. And that's, I don't want listeners to be like, oh, okay, cool. I can get some training and do this. And like the same way I learned how to use an Excel spreadsheet, I'm going to learn how to be grateful. No, like you actually have to do it. There's a great, oh my God, I'm going to plug your website real quick. There's a great on Art of Lifing, ARTOFLIFEING.com, or just search Keka Art of Lifing. And you have this great resource, which I get as a lead generator, but that's okay. We love it anyway. The 30-day gratitude sharing challenge. Go if this is resonating with you, what we're talking about, go download it right now. It'll be so helpful. Okay, so back. Nobody clicked on this podcast to listen to me. They wanted to hear from you. So back to you. Now, I have two questions to kind of wrap up our conversation. Mm-hmm. There's a group of people that listen to this that when I get emails or they tweet at me or they know me in real life and tell me, this group of people are the ones that are thinking about launching something new for themselves, either as an entrepreneur, a career change, or like making the next step in their career, looking for a new place or that will take a chance on them. And as you're an entrepreneur yourself, and probably more so as a mother of two, you're used to taking these leaps of faith and then inevitable disappointments and setbacks. So how do you harness those setbacks and take in all the gratitude and empathy and lifing skills that we've talked to continue to move forward?
Yes. Oh, Matthew, this is such a great question because, so often we tend to think of success as that straight line. And we know that it's very squiggly and it goes up and down. And still, I think we often think, okay, I'm going from point A to point B. This is what I want to do. This is my vision and this is where I want to go. And I can certainly say with the Art of Lifing journey that I've been on, it has been many squiggly lines all over the place. And there is, the biggest thing that I can say in my experience has been, what is your intrinsic motivation to do the things that you want to do? Why are you doing them is so important. I'm such a big fan of Simon Sinek and, the power of why and understanding your why. But I'll give you just two examples because there were two phases in my entrepreneurial journey that each stemmed from a different reason. So I was working full-time at the ad agency at DDB when I became pregnant with my first son. And I loved my job at the agency. It was so much fun. It didn't feel like work, but we had very long hours and we were building the business, so it would be like we'd be working all day. And then in the evening, we'd order dinner. Everybody would sit together. We'd have dinner together and then we would keep working. And sometimes we'd work till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. And, my mom would be like, what kind of company is this? And I would say, I'm having a blast. This is so much fun. But then I had my son. And suddenly for me, there was no room for compromise there. And I thought, I just don't want to be away from my son for that many hours. I still love my job, but I just don't want to be away from him for that long. So I decided to kind of take that leap of faith and create my own business and my own marketing company because I just wanted to do things based on the values that were important to me. And being around my son was really important. When I had my second son, we had a full-time nanny that would come and work at our house so that I could do my work during the day, but I could hang out with him for bath time. I could go to the park with him for a little bit, and it gave me that sort of, ability. But I'll tell you, when you focus in on doing the best you can do based on the values that are important to you, things can change. So for me, no matter what happened in my business, no matter when I had people that said no, or I had like a really big hope for something and it didn't come through, I was still fueled by the fact that I want to be the mom that stays with my kids. And I want to be that professional because I love what I do. And there was no room for compromise in either of those. So they had to intermix and intermingle. But, the story I wanted to share with you about this was the fact that sometimes the successes that come to you are not things that you can plan. So I had, when I went on maternity leave and then I actually ended up not coming back and I started my own business, I was a director at the ad agency level. And my next move, I thought it would have been great if I could be a VP one day. That would have really helped boost my career into the next level. And I thought, oh, well, I have two beautiful kids. I'm certainly not complaining. But I was working as a freelancer. I was working with DDB, helping them on different projects. And we had this mining company that had come in and asked us to pitch some programming in Vancouver. And my little guy, Kieran, at the time was about 3 months old. So you can imagine at 3 months old, I'm feeding him around the clock. And I was like, I'm not going away on a 3-day trip without him because that's the time you bond with your kids and, this sort of thing. Long story short, I ended up taking my nanny and my little baby with me. So his first flight was at 3 months and we went to Vancouver. And I'm walking into this mining company that we were talking to the board of advisors. Amazing group of people. But here I am, I'm in a 30-something Indian looking, girl, 5'1", and I'm in a room with a group of men who are in their 50s and 60s who, make $1 million deals over breakfast. And I looked nothing like them. My experience was nothing like them. And Matthew, just for a moment, I had the, who am I to be in this room kind of complex, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? These guys know so much more about business. What am I doing? But then I had to reset, almost recalibrate my mindset because I thought, hang on a second, these guys might know everything about mining, but they don't know PR the way I know PR. They also don't know the program that I've created for them here with the agency is going to be amazing for them. So I had to recalibrate myself into where I was most powerful and where I could deliver the most amount of value instead of comparing myself to everybody else in the room who were totally different than me. So I was like, no, wait a minute. I got this. I can do this. And this is going to be amazing for them. And I know it. So I went out there and I pitched my heart out and I was authentic and I shared everything. And I came home and I thought, okay, big win. That was awesome. So I'm working at home. So I'm, doing calls. I was actually working virtually the way we did in COVID. This was 10 years ago. Right. And one day day, my manager from the ad agency calls me, and I had just finished feeding Kieran. Caden's like playing around me. He's 4 years old. He's playing around me. And my manager says, I'm really excited to tell you we've promoted you to vice president. And I, if I wasn't sitting, I would have fallen off my chair. But that would have been the ultimate goal or dream or success for me at that time, career-wise. But I said to her, I'm super grateful for this opportunity. I didn't even ask for this, so I'm really just totally taken aback by this. Thank you so much. But I can't take this job because I have a 3-month-old in my lap and a 4-year-old here. And so I can't do this. And to my utter shock and amazement, like the leadership at that time were so beyond their time for the industry and what they did. But they said, Keka, that's the value that you bring to the table when you're doing this work for us, and we want to recognize that. So nothing has to change the way that we're working. You can keep doing what you're doing the way you are, but we want to recognize you with this promotion. And honestly, Matthew, I didn't believe it until they gave me their branded business cards that actually had my name with vice president written on it. And I said to my husband, I think I'm the world's first freelance VP of like a multinational ad agency. How does this work? And him, in all his wisdom, said to me, don't question it, just go with it. Just run with it. And so, this is one of the things I wanted to share with our listeners is that we have goals. We set up our goals. That wasn't even a goal for me at that time because I didn't think it was attainable, but I was fully in the work I was doing, fully focused on the value I was delivering and why I wanted to do it. And that came to me. And I have to tell you, I have I'm proud of this. I have actually 50 marketing awards, international and national, to my name, which, and I don't mean this in a bragging or boasting way, but I just really feel like I'm proud of myself because that's a lot of hard work that's represented in those awards. But it's all been because I've loved what I've done. I've never done it for the awards or accolades, but they've come to me. And so when you are rooted in your value and your purpose and you know what you're going to do, the universe just responds, and the successes will come to you sometimes without you even knowing. So if I may take 2 more minutes just to tell you the complete opposite way that I started the second business around art of lifing was, I had done this for 24 years, marketing, and I was like, there's got to be something more. Am I going to do marketing for the rest of my life? Like I was getting to the point where I felt like I really needed to do something more, but I didn't know what it was. And I had a coach once, Philip McKernan, in his wisdom had said to me, in the absence of clarity, take action. And I think that's a huge lesson that I took away that I think every entrepreneur needs to think about is that when you don't know, so often we kind of have a fuzzy goal or we have directionally this is my North Star. This is what where I want to go, but I don't know what to do. You've got to take action. And the art of lifing started that way because I started by saying, I just need to do something more than advertising. I need to have a bigger impact and I don't know what it is. Again, I went back to the fact that I'm a mom. I love my kids. I see so much bullying and self-esteem issues around young people. And I thought, I want to help my kids and I want to help kids in this category feel better about themselves and have greater self-esteem. So I thought, I'm going to do an anti-bullying program. And again, my question was, who am I? I'm a marketer. Who am I? I'm not a teacher. I don't have any of this. But again, I stayed in my power and I thought, wait a minute, there's a lot that I know that I can still give out to people. So without a lot of clarity, I took action anyway. I put the question out on social media and I said, do I have any teacher friends or anybody, principals who'd be willing to allow me to come in and beta test a program that I have? And at the time, the program was actually all in my head. I had nothing written out, but I had a vision of where I wanted to go. And I was overwhelmed by the responses people had. And they ended up coming and saying, yeah, do this. And so then I created the program. I put it all out from my head onto paper. I went in and I presented, and it had an incredible impact that I didn't believe until I actually saw it. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm onto something. So at the time, it was all focused on gratitude and anti-bullying. And then, I was like, I need to go deeper and I need to think deeper. And then the art of lifing came to me one day. I was driving along a rainy road and I was like, adulting. I want to life the way people are adulting. And I thought, I want to find happiness and I want to find purpose. And I literally pulled my car over to the side of the road, pulled out my phone, and I wrote down the art of lifing so I wouldn't forget it. And I thought, I don't even know how to define this. Somebody had said to me once, what do you do? Or like, this was like 4 years ago. And I said, well, people think of life as a noun. I want to turn it into a verb. And she said, dear, you're giving me a grammar lesson and nobody cares about grammar. And I thought, okay, I know, but hold on. Like, I didn't quite have it. And I worked at it and I worked at it and I worked at it. And then I realized, wait a minute, what I'm really trying to say is I know branding and I know all of these principles and I've been applying them for the past 3 years to our our mental health, but I've just never made those worded connections, and suddenly now I had the words. So there's an evolution that constantly happens. And I know that this is not the end for me. It'll keep evolving, but we have to believe in ourselves. So when the setbacks happen, when you don't think something's going to, something doesn't go your way, the key thing is to not give up on that intrinsic motivation, that drive that fuels you inside, to really give that the validation it deserves. And in the absence of clarity, take action. As soon as you do that, the successes will come before you know it. And then you can know the ups and downs are all going to be there. That's okay, but you're still going to grow in the end.
That's great. I wanted to talk about, I was going to ask you about purpose and mission, but you did that already. That's amazing. Two things. If you're just listening to this and not watching, Keka actually has her 50 awards behind her, and she's wearing a few medals, just so you know. So when she says it's not for the, no, I'm only teasing. She does not have any of them on display. In fact, there's like some very cool spice rack in the background.
Oh, those are actually bangles, Indian bangles.
Okay. All right. It looked like spices from far away. But also, I just wanted to share this. When you talked about, basically you're saying, no, this job does not fit my lifestyle. I was talking with Austin Pomeroy, who is one of my top 5 favorite Pomeroys. Yeah. He's our audio editor. I asked him what's his dream in his work. And I shared how, like, when I was a young man, I envisioned like being the editor-in-chief of a small town newspaper or something. And he told me it was a life that enabled him to live his life and then also do work he liked at the same time. Yes. And I was like, oh, like that's not a job title at all. So if you are not, so Keka, you are well ahead of your time, but if you're listening to this, that is going to be your answer. But when you sit down to do performance reviews, if you're not hearing that already, you're going to be hearing that a lot more often.
Yes.
Before we go, Keka, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah.
And maybe a few resources where they might be able to get a good idea of what you're about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would invite anybody to come check out my website. As you said, it's theartoflifing.com, and lifing is spelled LIFEING.com. And so I've got resources like the Gratitude Sharing Challenge. I've got a lot of different things that you can check out there. And then I also have a YouTube channel. So I have the Art of Lifing channel. It's Art of Lifing with Keka. If you go to YouTube and just search that, you'll find me there. And to me, the most important part of this journey is us doing things together and learning from each other. So the spirit in which I do my Art of Lifing videos on YouTube is just sharing my own experiences, my own insights, and I really love to make that collaborative. So, check me out on LinkedIn, subscribe to my channel, like email me, whatever it is. My information is all out there, but I would love to connect with people and love to hear what other people are doing. I'm such a big believer that we can all learn from each other. Being in the marketing world for so long, I've learned that there is just beautiful magic inside everybody. It's just that so often we don't see it for ourselves. And like that's at the end of the day, honestly, Matthew, I think that's the biggest, most powerful thing about gratitude is that the program that I have for corporate companies and schools is called Gratitude Mirrors. And I picked the word mirror because when we show gratitude to somebody, what I really believe we do is we hold a mirror out to somebody to really show them how brightly they shine in this world. Because we all tend to be our worst critic. We tend to think that we're the really dull light bulb that's just not there. And then when you actually can show the mirror and say, you're shining like my friend calls it the 1,000-watt light bulb. Lisa Ferguson talks about it that way. And I think we shine at that 1,000-watt, but we just don't see ourselves. So we don't see that. It's just really important for me to help people see the magic inside of them. And I love that conversation when we can do that together.
Cool beans. All right. Well, listen, before we go, I told you before we started, a lot of people make this happen. It's not just you and I show up. You just showed up. You could manage it all on your own. I have a team to help me get here in one piece. Cindy Craig, that does all the booking and arranging for our guests. Naomi Grossman helps research questions and helps you get prepared for today's show. Jamie Hunter, if you're seeing this on social media, you saw a video or saw a tweet or an Instagram post, he's the guy that takes care of all of that for Leading with Nice. Carrie Cotton, while I've been watching our Slack channel fill up where she's taking care of clients and doing our account management. Jeff Anhorn takes care of all the video editing. Austin Pomeroy, as mentioned earlier, again, maybe top 6 Pomeroys. He does all the audio editing and makes it sound so great. And of course, my wife Allison makes teamwork makes the dream work. I knew there was some order to that. So thank you so much. But mostly, Keka, this would have been a very boring show if it was just me. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure, Matthew. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Oh, and for more, if you want to see the transcript or more, or get some links to Keka's stuff, visit us at leadingwithnice.com. We'll talk to you next time.